As if there was any chance we were not getting behind the mic after that game. Montreal wins game 3, and we're here today on Locked On Canadiens with a bonus episode to tell you how it all went down.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Game 3 bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens. I don't have the number in front of me. Thanks so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day, this time very early on Saturday morning. Thanks for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as that. Maybe it's Ian. I will do what I have taken to doing in these last few games. I want to give Laura Saba the floor here, the active stick, the floor to talk about your feelings after Montreal emerges victorious after a very wild Game 3 in Montreal on Friday night. Laura, the floor is yours.
I think there were so many elements to that game. I don't know if we can describe it in the short amount of time that we have. I will say that Tom Wilson should be in jail just for being unpleasant. Like, imagine you could put away unpleasant people. Like,
yeah, manners jail.
Yeah, he would be at the top of the list. I'm so proud of the team. Honestly, I got really emotional because just before we started recording, we heard Jakub Dobes talking about how scared he was and how excited he was and how he teared up at the end. He cried at the end. And that was after we saw, Sam Montembeault hugging him after he came out. He came off with a win. It was a dominant game from the Montreal Canadiens. If I'm the Washington Capitals, I'm scared. I honestly am, because at the end of the day, what the Canadiens did in the first two games was they kept it close. Despite the fact that they were outplayed in certain stretches, right? And if you listen to the episode of Game Over that Ian and I were just on, Andrew ran through some stats. Throughout the three games, Montreal Canadiens have actually been dominant in most areas other than high danger chances. So at this point, being dominated like that, like the one game you couldn't keep close was the one where you lost badly. I think I would be nervous. I'm not saying the Montreal Canadiens are going to win this series because they won that game. I'm saying that if I'm Spencer Carberry, I have a lot of work to do. So with the Montreal Canadiens, there's a lot of guys we're going to talk about in this bonus episode that deserve their flowers. There were very few passengers. There were a couple of moments where, a guy made a mistake or, went for the hit and they allowed a goal against. We do have to talk about the goaltending situation, obviously. But I think that this game, the Bell Center crowd got what it paid for, and I know they paid a lot.
Yeah. Look, I mean, and I've said this in a few places now. I said it before the game started on Blue Sky, and that, the playoffs are never the goal in Montreal, right? The game means too much there to just say that's the goal. That's what was so frustrating about the Bergevin era. It was just, but his mantra was, well, we just got to make it in and anything can happen. That's garbage. Like that.
No,
That's
you got to
not
make
the way.
it happen.
Right. And I stand by that. The playoffs are never a goal, right? This year it was a stretch goal for this team because they're a flawed hockey team. They're not a top to bottom perfect hockey team. There are very few of those, but they're getting there. Even with that, I found that this was a moment that the players earned. That moment at the Bell Center when they brought back the torch and they lit the ice on fire and the building erupted when they came out on the ice and the building continued to erupt throughout it. They earned that throughout the season, right? All of you think of the bumps and bruises they played through, the low points of the season, the high points of the season, they all worked out to getting that game at the Bell Center. And the beauty of the playoffs is that you're only guaranteed 4 games. And every time you win, you get another game, right? That's how these series work. If you win 4 of them, you win 4 more. The Canadiens right now, I think they're playing for each other because I think they're just like us and they don't want this ride to end. They like playing with each other, right? They like playing as a team. They don't want this to end. I think that's sort of what I got out of this. And they want to get more out of the Bell Center. They want to force a game 6 in this series. They want to be able to come back here at some point to play games in front of that crowd. It was a long time coming. The last time this building was full, Alex Radulov was scoring an overtime winner against the Rangers, right? Like it was a bit of a cathartic moment after a season of a lot of ups and downs. And quite frankly, after 4 seasons of just bottoming out, right? Like I've joked about it a couple of times, like the players earned that moment, but so did you. Listening to this show, you earned that moment too. Don't let anybody take that away from you. If you sat through the Mike Hoffman years, that you earned that. So I hope folks enjoyed that. The folks there, the folks at home watching it, like this is why sports matter, man. Like that moment was so cool. I was looking forward to this game as soon as they made the playoffs. Let's get into the game a little bit more. I think it's another incredible showing from the top line. All three of them picked up a goal. Cole Caufield just wouldn't stop shooting the puck, and I hope he never stops shooting the puck because he's just one of the best at it. We continue to watch this first line thrive. Is that why they won this game? Was the first line that dominant? Did the secondary scoring, did that chip in? Like, what was the biggest factor for you?
I think it was everybody. I think it was a situation. Remember, we talked about, as the season started coming to a close, there were perfect situations in which everybody knew their assignment. I feel like everybody on this team had the shared assignment. They had a shared vision for it. Yes, the top line was dominant. I do feel that Slafkovsky had a really dominant game, right? He was magnificent tonight. Josh Anderson had a huge game, right? There were people that shone and stood out, right? Alex Carrier, all of those guys, right? They stood out. But David Savard with his 4.5 minutes in the game, I think it was like 10 or 11 minutes. That
he gets like 11 a night now.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? Like he's even he performed the exact play that was required in that exact moment, right? That's how it worked out for the most part in this game. So I do think that it was a group effort, but I think like if you want to drill it down to one thing, I think that it has to be an intangible. These guys came in knowing that they could do this, and the nerves were gone. That the bumps and the bruises were gone. They've taken beatings and they've gotten back up, and I think that's the big thing is they took those beatings and they learned from them. They didn't shrink away. They didn't give up. And they all came in determined. They all came in with a shared vision, whether it's like Marty was able to instill it, whether it's the players just kind of came together. And everybody did the things that they were supposed to do, including Jakub Dobes.
Yeah. A goalie we didn't expect to see in these playoffs. And he picks up, I mean, I joked about it on Game Over. No one would have thought that Jakub Dobes is picking up his first playoff win before Sam Montembeault gets his. Like, that was kind of cosmically unfair about this aspect of it. But hey, that's how this works out. The one thing I really liked about this game, we talk about learning. Like, they're learning how to win these games. They're learning how to play these games. That third period. So they go into the third period up by a goal, which they had done that against Washington this season, not in the playoffs, but in games earlier this season, they've been tied or leading heading into the third period against this team, and they collapsed, and it didn't end the way they wanted it to. This time, they gave up that goal to Ovechkin pretty early. It seemed like a bad line change, or they just didn't cover the rush particularly well. And it didn't matter because Montreal then took the lead right back on Christian Dvorak's game-winning goal. It's very funny to say. He's got
I love
two.
saying that.
It's fantastic. We all owe him, first of all, a debt of gratitude and also an apology. It's just the way that we treated this man all season. And the Canadiens, they did not sit back in the third period, right? Like, they did not go. I kept sitting on the couch expecting them to go into a shell and just do, the bare minimum to try to steal that game. And it never happened. They kept pushing. They kept shooting. They outshot Washington 41-20 or 40-21 in this game. They outhit them 45-26. So they had the puck the whole game. They shot the whole time, and they still managed to almost double them in hits. So, look, I mean, the series isn't tied. It's still 2-1 Washington. It was 2-1 Washington in 2010 as well. So, history's repeating itself a little bit there. And I thought Jared Book had an interesting point. Yaroslav Halak replaced Carey Price at about the same time in the same game, Game 3 of 2010, which for a different reason. Price had given up a bunch of goals, and they had decided that was the end of that. But now Jakub Dobes steps in, and he's, just as we've talked about Ivan Demidov being an X factor, Jakub Dobes can be a little bit of an X factor now. He's a bit of a wild card in net. I wonder what we're going to see out of him should Montembeault not be able to play. But we'll get to the goaltending, I think, in our second segment here. I want to give you the last word. How are you feeling? we had been very positive, right? We think we never thought the series was over when they went down 2-0. It's very much not over now. In fact, you might say the momentum is swinging the Canadiens' way. I'll give you the final word of the segment here. What are your feelings heading into Game 4?
I think they have to remember how they were successful in this game. And I think, we don't know what's going to happen with Montembeault. But I really want to think about the disappointment in the first two games after they lost, like the faces that we saw on the bench, Slavkovsky's body language, his like brokenhearted, post game two comments. And then I want them to look at how it felt tonight. And I want them to understand that how it felt tonight, they were able to orchestrate it. And going into game 4, we're at game 4 at this point. Going into game 4, like the one thing that I would want them to do is just remember that they were able to put everything together tonight. They just need to do that. And not to lose their heads, because it is getting really frustrating and annoying watching the Capitals get away with so much egregious stuff.
We'll talk about the fracas that occurred at the end of the second period in our next segment. But yeah, I completely agree. I think they need to bottle up whatever feeling they had on Friday night, take it with them to Sunday night, still in Montreal, and then you got to take it on the road. The only way, even if you tie it after game 4, the only way you're winning this series is if you take one in Washington at the very least. Yeah. So they're gonna need to bring that feeling on the road with them. All right. We'll leave that there. When we come back, we'll go further in depth on the goaltending, because it wasn't just Montreal who lost their starting goaltender. And we'll talk about one of the most crazy moments of the playoffs so far, with Anderson and Wilson battling on the Capitals bench, which I still can't believe happened. We'll talk about that and maybe some repercussions coming later in the series. We'll get into that in just a minute. Did you know your Amazon Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick's 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, from EA Sports College Football 25, which is one of my personal favorites, to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. And you can do that as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You'll probably notice that gaming is getting a little bit more expensive these days. As someone who plays a lot of games myself, it's starting to hurt the wallet a bit more. But with my Fire TV, I can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, that's great. A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you want to plug in. I'm a big fan of making all of my gaming setups as portable as possible, and Fire TV makes that easier than ever. Head to Amazon.com/FireTV-LockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select TV devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, we're back. This is a bonus episode. It'll be a little truncated. We are very sleep deprived, as you can imagine, during these playoffs, but we're here. We could not miss the opportunity to jump in and talk about a playoff win for the Montreal Canadiens. And it's one that was entertaining, as any playoff game I've seen the Canadiens play. But also, like, there's a lot of storylines that are going to come out of this that we need to start getting in front of. One of them being the goaltending. Sam Montembeault left the game towards the end of the second period. Dobes was put in. It happened during a commercial break, so the people at the Bell Center knew before most people did, but we came back and Jakub Dobes was in net for Montreal. At the same time, Washington loses their starting goalie late in the third. Dylan Strome just laid out his own goaltender trying to defend the odd man rush the Canadiens had generated that they ended up scoring on. And then Dylan Strome just went into Logan Thompson in a really violent way. Really hoping the best for that player in Logan Thompson. He's been so entertaining to watch, even though as frustrated as I am as a Canadiens fan. But you want to beat him. You don't want that to happen to him, right? Like that should go without saying, but we will say it anyway, just so we're totally clear. But the goaltending matchup now is a bit of a shakeup. Laura, where do you think the advantage lies in this newfound goaltending matchup that is now Jakub Dobes and former Montreal Canadian Charlie Lindgren?
So I've seen Charlie Lindgren play. I've also seen Jakub Dobes play. I've seen him come up big in big moments. His first game his first few wins, right? And I was a little bit nervous. Obviously, we talked about it on Game Over. I was a little bit nervous with his body language. He wasn't showing me the Jakub Dobes that had what's his face, Jordan Greenaway,
Yeah.
want to murder him. He didn't have that, but that doesn't mean he can't pick it up, right? Like this was a situation where he was not expecting to play an NHL game until the preseason next year. He's sitting there, and then this happens towards the end of the second period. It's not even like, Sam tweaked something earlier in the day, so last minute he's the goalie, right?
Yeah.
So I think that he, with the moment being one where he can prepare a little bit better for, I feel like we are going to see that tall, confident guy. He could steal a game, he could steal a period, and sometimes the Canadiens will only need him to steal a period. Based on the way they played tonight, I think they can absolutely do it. I hope that the Capitals adjustments don't come in the form of trying to injure this one too.
Yeah, no, look, I think your assessment of what's in front of them is very accurate. I as nervous as I am about Jakub Dobes, I think he just has that gamer in him that he's not going to make this easy. I just think back to the last game he played. I think it was the last game he played against Nashville. He went into Nashville and the Canadiens were heavily outshot and he battled and he battled and he battled. I think he's a goalie that looks better the more shots are sent towards him, very similar to one Yaroslav Halak from that 2010 run. On the other side, there's Charlie Lindgren, who was the starting goalie for the Caps last year. He got them into the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, he wasn't particularly good. But then again, nobody on that Washington team was all that good. They got swept by the New York Rangers. I'm wondering what kind of game we'll see from Charlie Lindgren. Is this a Charlie Lindgren revenge series now? Is this a Charlie Lindgren's going to try to steal the net back series at this point? It'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. It does kind of stink that both these starting goalies are taken out, because as much as the Canadiens might have a bit of an advantage now, you want to see, as a hockey fan, these two teams duke it out to the fullest of their capacity, and we're all kind of getting robbed of that, unfortunately. Last thing we wanted to touch on before we call it a day here, a very long day here at Locked On Canadiens, putting out a ton of content. You're probably all sick of listening to us talk, but guess what? We're not going anywhere, so deal with it.
The Canadiens they keep winning. I just checked, and it's about 12:30. It's like very early on Saturday, and there's still no news on what actually happened with Sam Montembeault. So
yeah, I would imagine it's the playoffs. They're going to be very hush-hush about that until they absolutely...
He has a body injury.
Yeah. How nervous do you think the E-Bug was? Because he showed up on the Canadian to the side of the Canadiens bench, not only after the Montembeault injury, but then Logan Thompson gets hurt, and the E-Bug is the E-Bug for both teams. Yeah. So he could have gone in for either one of these teams at any moment. Like, that's got to be scary, no?
I mean, you kind of just have to have fun with it, right? Like, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of E-Bugs. There's a lot of really fun stories. Actually, Stephen Weiner wrote a book about it. It's worth checking out. But like, these things are kind of a crapshoot, right? So like, I would have just been like, you know what? If they're gonna score 9 goals on me, this is Alex Ovechkin, right? I'm going up against Alex Ovechkin, or I don't know who that the equivalent would be on the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe like
Cole Caufield. He shot the puck a dozen times on his own.
Yeah. There you go. So like, you're kind of, you kind of have to have fun with it. You kind of have to laugh, and then you're going to be known as the guy that lost the series for Montreal, or you're going to be known as the guy that turned the series around and Montreal ended up winning it. So, and if he's a local guy, that makes him a hero on both counts.
Yeah. Speaking of a hero, let's talk about Josh Anderson, who absolutely took it to Tom Wilson in this game. Tom Wilson gives us the most gifable moment of the playoffs so far by sitting on the bench and doing the little crying face, which has backfired tremendously in a way that feels so good. It feels so good to be on that side of that kind of moment. Because earlier this season, Montreal is up 3-0 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Xhekaj points to the scoreboard. They end up losing that game, right? Like, this feels very much like that, except the game was not in Washington's favor. Montreal was winning at this moment. Anderson just is in a scrap with him after the buzzer, and Wilson throws him and the linesman onto the bench. First of all, I thought, abuse of an official was a misconduct and a suspension. But apparently I learned that you can, as long as you take a Canadian with you, you can throw a linesman into the bench. So it's good to know, Josh Anderson and Arbor Xhekaj next game, that you can just do that. As long as you take, Tom Wilson with you, you can just, you can throw Garrett Rank into the bench and it's fine. This has been bubbling between these two players. Do you think Anderson is handling this well? Like, I think he's doing a masterful job of making Tom Wilson lose his mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because when you see it, you see them get into it. But what Josh Anderson is doing is he's doing the thing that the Washington Capitals were getting away with, which is like really stretching the definition of possessing the puck when you're throwing a hit, right? Really stretching it into like next week. And so he's just been kind of really observing and learning like what the Caps are getting away with, and then that's the line he's been playing. But he's always been this kind of guy where he'll get in your face. Like sometimes, he sees it as his role to kind of be that physical player. And then Tom Wilson is the one losing his mind, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Josh Anderson went up to him and said, "Throw me into the bench," right? That's not what happened. So like Tom Wilson is having a lot more trouble controlling his emotions. And I think Josh Anderson is really playing that line very, very carefully. And for me, that's where I think he's doing well, is he knows exactly where the line is and he knows exactly how not to cross it. And he's literally just treading that line and staying on there.
That play, that moment, I had left the room. I thought the period was over. I had left the room to go take care of something, and my wife was on the couch going, "Oh, the girlies are fighting. Oh, they're fighting." Like, she just kept saying that. I was like, "It's not that bad." She goes, "Ian, you need to come back in here." And I was like, "They're on the bench? Why are they on the?" It was very bizarre to just leave in that moment and come back.
Yeah.
The moment to me though that Josh Anderson won this, there was two of them. Late in the third period, Anderson and Wilson are on the boards. And Anderson, the ref is between them. And then Wilson throws like this cheap little like backhand rabbit punch. And Anderson just kind of like keeps yapping at him. Not like even very animated. Just like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, what are you going to do? The next shift, though, I believe it's the next shift. The puck goes into Charlie Lindgren and he just freezes it. And Josh Anderson skates into the blue paint and stops pretty aggressively. Doesn't snow Lindgren. He does it to the side of him. But in that moment, he knew that nobody could touch him. He went right into the paint and he looked around at all the Caps around him and he said, "None of you are going to do a darn thing." Like, in that moment, if I'm a Caps fan, I'm like, "Oh, that's not a great look. We didn't do anything about that." He literally went to the one place we don't like guys to go, and we're just going to let him do it. In that moment, Josh Anderson won in Game 3. And he's going to need to keep finding those moments as this series goes on, because this isn't going anywhere. This battle is just starting. Especially if Montreal finds a way to win Game 4 and tie this series heading back to Washington. That's a pretty significant battle to have to keep fighting. And I like Josh Anderson's chances as the series goes deeper to continue to drive the Tom Wilsons of that team completely bonkers.
Yeah. All he has to do is just not go far enough to lose his head. And I think it's something that all of them have had to learn, right? Like Brendan Gallagher has had to learn it because he was always the person that was kind of, treading that line. But once in a while, he would just really lose it at somebody. And I think they all just kind of have to do that. They have to do the Nick Suzuki thing where he acts like he doesn't care and then he punishes you on the scoreboard.
Yeah. Who's a great guy to be watching right now, watching Josh Anderson do this, is Arbor Xhekaj. Being in the lineup and seeing how Anderson handled that, he played it to perfection. And if that's the kind of player that we can expect Arbor Xhekaj to be, oh boy, like that is an incredible tool to have. As Marty says, he's a card. He's a good player for us to have in a moment like this.
Yeah.
Any last final thoughts before we call it here? It's been a long day for us. Let's I want to give you the final thought here as we head to Game 4.
Honestly, like I think Juraj Slafkovsky had an underrated game. Oh my God, I forgot Alex Newhook. Okay, let me leave it on that word. He has been so good, and he's had no points or goals to show for how good he's been over the course of not just this series, but like many chunks of the season with assignments that are almost impossible. And again, he's not that great at the faceoff, so we always focus on that. But that goal that he got, I feel like was a gratifying moment because his speed, carrying the puck in, carrying the puck out, all of that has been phenomenal, but it's been overshadowed by the fact that he is not a number 2 center for this team, and he's been forced to play with one. And then every time he takes a faceoff, he loses it. So that to me was just a product of how good he's been over the course of like the last stretch, not just the first few games.
Yeah, the line A out, him being out of the lineup really, like, Marty cooked with that line with Demidov, Evans, and Newhook back on the wing. I think that's going to be a spectacular line as this series goes on. And yeah, the last point I'll have on Alex Newhook, we want to see more of his speed. And this was the game that showed us why. He drew 2 penalties because they just couldn't handle him. They could not figure out how to stop him without impeding him in a legal way. So love what I'm seeing from Alex Newhook, finally getting rewarded. A guy that plays the game in a really effective way and finally finds a way to put it into the net, even if it was the 6-3 goal. It was nice because then the Olays could start and nobody would freak out. All right, cool. We're going to leave that there. And we're going to leave that until game 4. So we'll see you guys back on Monday after game 4. Hopefully we're talking about a tied series. But hey, 3-1 against Washington, headed back into Washington. I've seen that movie before, and it plays out okay. Thanks for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Ian Boisvert at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Actor Stick. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys after game 4.